Alrighty, so as promised, I am going to look at Atlanta United and this ongoing 9 game winless run that they currently have right now. And that, it's been a pretty miserable season so far for Atlanta. But I think when you look at this 9 game winless run, I think as much as I know a lot of Atlanta fans want Gonzalo Pineda to be ousted, and certainly they want Carlos Bocanegra to be been ousted because that seems like been a trend that has started even going all the way back to the 2020 season. When you look at this 9 game winless run, it's kind of interesting the fact that they haven't really been blown out in these 9 game winless run. In fact, in most of these games, they have been in these games, and that really even the losses that they suffer, it's one goal losses, which means that I think that maybe is kind of what gets the illusion in terms of the front office of the fact that, well, yes, they're not playing well and that they have problem in terms of scoring in some of these games as well, but they're not playing like absolutely horrendous, and that they'll think that eventually there are going to be games where these one goal games or even these draws are going to turn to wins. Now, that being said, in terms of wins, so the last time they, of course, won a game was all the way back in March 31st. They got a 3-0 win against the Chicago Fire at home. The goals came from Yakimakis in the 45th minute and Tiari getting the double in the 64th and the 5th minute stoppage time. And keep in mind, this was during a time where the Atlanta definitely was flying high. And this is where those infamous words has been just kind of cursed this team for the past couple of years of Atlanta is back. What we're throwing around at least during the time. And I can understand again because fall well from that 3-0 win against Chicago. They also had a couple of big wins. Most recently, I think they got a big win against New England where they won 4-1 in that one. But you got to remember, those are two of the worst team in the Eastern Conference, and the schedule was going to get harder for Atlanta because as you look into the next 3 games, they were facing some really good teams and teams that at least at that point were doing well. No, I say that they play against NYCFC, which I know NYCFC has been in an incredible run, and maybe I would say that they definitely deserve their own video in terms of this incredible turnaround that Nick Cushing and his team has done after just a really slow start to the season. They got a 1-1 draw in that one. And keep in mind, up to that point, as well as Atlanta it was flying high, the narrative is can they of course do it on the road? And up to that point, when you look at some of these road games, some of these road games were kind of unfortunate because one of the road game was facing against the defending champion on opening day, which that's always going to be tough. And then the other one of those road game was against Toronto, and they were basically missing half of their roster because of international breaks. So this was a chance for them to get a big road win against an NYCFC side that at that point we didn't know that they would go on an incredible run. Well, it didn't start off well with Santi Rodriguez getting the penalty, but Tiari did score in the 65th minute, and they salvaged a 1-1 draw in that game. And then they play against the Union in the next one. And then when they went up 2-0 in this game from Danny Rios and Caleb Wiley, everybody thought, well, nothing seems like it's wrong with this Atlanta team. It looks like they're on their way to a dominant home win, right? And then Mikel Uru and Kyle Wagner scored. And those two goals, of course, came in a span of 4 minutes. And I argue, if I remember from that game, the Union had some big opportunity to win that one late as well. So yeah, not ideal for them to get a 2-2 draw on this one. And then this is where the home struggle begins. And this is what began the first of what would be right now still an active 4 game home losing streak right now. And it's still now the longest active home losing streak. I mean, before the longest active home losing streak for Atlanta was only at 2 games. That, of course, came to an end, and that the record was broken in a bad way in this game I'll talk about. But in the game against Cincinnati, I mean, I will say that Cincinnati is a very good team. I mean, they're fighting tooth and nail with Inter Miami, but they had a lead in that game. I mean, Amada gave them a 1-0 lead, and looks like this was gonna be a big win. And keep in mind, this was also back when Cincinnati was still struggling in terms of scoring goals. And then Cincinnati does their thing that we've seen so much this season, which is scoring in a quick fashion to completely turn the game on its head. And in this case, it's Oriano and Acosta scoring in a span of just 2 minutes, and that was the difference in terms of getting a 2-1 win in that one. But that being said, heading into the 27th when they play against the Chicago Fire, and this is where, I know if you're an Atlanta fan, it kind of sucks that the last three games hasn't gone well for you, but you're playing against one of the worst team in the league, that is the Chicago Fire, and you're thinking this is finally the game where they can finally win on the road. One of the biggest issue with Atlanta under Gonzalo Pineda, not just this season, but really ever since Gonzalo Pineda took charge of this team, is that they have had problems in terms of winning on the road. When you look at the Tata Martino team when they play that fun style of soccer, or even during the time of Frank de Boer and doing his one season there, they were a team that was still able to win road games. That has not been the case under Gonzalo Pineda. This team has really struggled on the road, and that kind of continue in this one. Again, this was a big chance to make a statement because it was facing against a relatively weak Fire side, and they got a nil-nil draw in that one, and it was a very uninspiring performance. But sure, after that uninspiring performance, surely they can turn it around in the next game against Minnesota, right? Because after all, I mean, they pretty much have always beat Minnesota in terms of the expansion bro derby. Nope. Instead, they lost that one, and I remember that was a game where Atlanta they had chances in that game, and that's also another their big issue with this Atlanta team. As much as in some of these games where they're given the chances, they haven't shown that clinical finishing ability. And again, part of that is that we have seen times where they were missing Yakimakis, but even when he come back, this team was still struggling to score the goals that they need, and it kind of come full ahead in this game where Minnesota got the two goals in quick succession. Ariaga and Oluwaseyi getting the two goals, and I think another main thing, at least in this early part of the 9 game winless run, is that this is a team that just, I mean, that when they do concede goals, it's gonna come relatively quick. They just kind of lose their concentration at points in these games. I mean, we saw it in this one, we saw it in this one, and we definitely saw it in this one as well. Before they know it, they were 2-0 down. Lobjanidze did get one back, and at least they didn't make it interesting late in the game, but they weren't able to get the 3 points. So now that's two home Boston and Rowan. This is again where Atlanta fans are starting to be very concerned, and that concern started to become full blown in the 11 minute game against DC United, where as I said, up to this point, Atlanta has never lost free home game in a row in their franchise history. It happened here. They did get goals from Amada from the spot, and then Patella, of course, scored an own goal. This was a game where they just cannot stop Christian Benteke, especially in the air. I mean, Benteke, he was running riot against that Atlanta backline. And I get that Atlanta backline wasn't starting their strongest team. And injuries also kind of have played part of this bad run that Atlanta has had. They have suffered some injuries, especially toward their back line. One of their main center back, Gregerson, has been missing times. But still, I mean, they were just getting outmanned by Benteke in this one, and he basically dunked on on them so hard that he scored a hat trick in that one, and all 3 goals came from the head of Christian Benteke. Then they head to the next game, and again, this is 3 straight loss, which is the first time in club history that they lost 3 straight, and now the heat is really on Gonzalo Pineda, and all Atlanta fans were hitting the panic button. And as I said, the very next game they really need to get a win, but the problem is they were facing against a red hot Cincinnati team, and that was probably the last opponent that they need to face if they desperately need a win. And guess what? They didn't get a win that one. In fact, it only took a 7-minute Kevin Kelsey goals to get Cincinnati all 3 points up to that point. Now, in the very next game against Nashville, and in a game where I think it's kind of the desperation derby, Atlanta did get a 1-1 draw in that one, but let's be honest. Yeah, that was one of the most lifeless game we have seen this season. In fact, you could argue maybe top 5 in terms of the most boring game we saw this season, and that I've said before, this is a team that, while they have been in a lot of these games during this 9 game winless run, they're not scoring the goals to do so. That's kind of what also frustrates Atlanta fans with the way that it's kind of they've gone from an era where in the beginning of the season where they were playing that beautiful brand of soccer that Tata Martino Atlanta team used to play to now under a style of soccer that's similar to Frank de Boer, and in ways that not only it's not pretty soccer, they're not getting the resort that they need. And this is another example of it against a lowly Nashville side. They have a chance to get a big win against their rival. They were kind of toothless throughout most of the game, and if it wasn't for about Schlitt's amazing goal, they would have lost that game, and that's when Raul Pineda could really they face the Heat, and he continued to face the Heat in the next game where again Atlanta they've lost three straight for the first time at home at home. They're definitely looking to avoid losing four straight. They don't do that. They lose 1-0 in the last game against LAFC. Bogut, of course, scoring on the free kick. Obviously, this was a game where we saw two red cards, one from Atlanta, one from LAFC. But I argue the one from Atlanta was the more costly one because again, Brett Guzan, just a moment of madness for him there. I don't know why he decided that it was a great idea to come off his lines and basically clear it off of your head, just being way too cute there. Got completely caught, and I even mentioned they were immediately punished after the free kick was conceded, and that was the goal that Bogu scored on the free kick, and turns out to be the winning goal of the game for LAFC. So during this 9-game winless run, they have a record of 0-4-5, and they have only reached 4 points so far doing this 9-game winless run. Now, when you look at the next 5 games and to see which game could they finally end this 9-game winless run, it's probably not the next game because the next game they're playing against Inter Miami, and that this is a road game for Atlanta. They're playing against a team that will have a well rested Messi and all his friends, and you know how I talked about how Atlanta hasn't been blown out in this 9-game winless run? Oh, this could be potentially be the game to do so because when you have a healthy Messi and a well-rested Messi and all his friends being there, and especially with how dangerous Inter Miami has been, and at times they just toy their opposition at will. If you're Atlanta and if you're Gonzalo Pineda, you're definitely fearing that this could be not only a bad game, but maybe this could be it for Gonzalo Pineda because again this is going to be tough for them to end the winless run, and it's almost kind of an impossible task for them to end the winless run. But if Atlanta gets absolutely blown out in this game, Pineda probably will find himself in the chopping block because I think one thing, like I said, the reason why I think maybe Pineda is still there, and the same goes for Bocanegra, is that I feel like this front office has kind of this delusion of the fact that at least some of these games we at least have kept it close, and it was kind of maybe unlucky at times that's in some of these games we weren't able to get a result, and in some way it is kind of true. I mean they have played well in some of these games. It's just the finishing uh, let them down, or there's also some incident where it's kind of a moment of madness, as we saw in the last game from Guzan. That is kind of unfortunate to see, but yeah, I think there is that delusion of the fact that they at least they keep it close and maybe things will turn around. And we usually see when head coach are being fired, it's usually after just an embarrassing resort. And looking at all these games, I mean, yeah, there are a couple of embarrassing resort, but they also were facing some really good team. And again, this Miami game, this maybe could be it for Gonzalo Pineda. And not necessary that he needs to win this game, but if he gets absolutely blown out in this game, if they lose like 6 or 5-0 against Inter Miami, like Orlando has suffer earlier this season, that's got to be it for Pineda. I mean, that has to be the chopping block. That probably maybe is the embarrassing performance to really have this front office to make the nerves of basically fire Gonzalo Pineda. And I also think one other thing that maybe is kind of shows why this Atlanta front office are not reluctant to fire Gonzalo Pineda and even Carlos Bocanegra is Garth Lagerwey in himself. One of the things that Garth Lagerwey, as much as he has done some great job with Seattle, one of the things that Garth Lagerwey doesn't do very often is fire a head coach. In fact, during his time with Seattle, they mentioned I don't think he has actually decided to officially say that I have fired a head coach. Even going back to when Ziggy Smith was fired in 2016, it was not Garth Lagerwey decision to fire him. It was one of the sporting director for the Sounders that back then that decided to make the call to fire Garth Lagerwey. So this is where I think because of the fact that Garth Lagerwey is not known to be a person that decided to let go either the GM or head coach and never kind of had that experience. Maybe that's also another reluctancy of him decided to let go of a head coach or even a GM as it in this case. But again, he'd probably have to do it if Atlanta just getting absolutely embarrassed in this game against Inter Miami. But after that, they do have a game against Charlotte, and Charlotte they've been kind of mediocre this season, but they're not an easy opponent when it comes to even breaking the team down, and with the way that Atlanta has really struggled to score this season, at least in this 9 game this run. That could be a tough game for them. Then they have a home game against Houston. That could be maybe a game that they could win, but Houston has shown this season that they've been very good on 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 the road. And then they have a game against DC United on the road. I mean, DC this season they have shown that they can play some good soccer, but also at times can throw games away. Though again, Atlanta tends to not really have a good record when they play against DC, especially on the road. And also, not to mention, this game is on the road too. Atlanta has always struggled under Gonzalo Pineda on the road, and then they can do the next 5 games by playing against St. Louis, who, even though St. Louis is also struggling, it's a road game as well, which is, again, it's been a kryptonite for Gonzalo Pineda, not just this season, but ever since he take charge of this team. Now, that being said, in terms of their current record, they have a 3-4-7 record, and they're currently with 13 points. They're sitting 12 in the standings, and what's kind of interesting is the fact that they're not really completely out of the playoff picture. Despite this free fall that they've been going through, they're actually still in playoff contention. They're 5 points back. And when you look at the goal scored and goal out, again, these numbers, it's kind of interesting because 17 goals that they've scored this season, it's definitely very low. I think that's like the second or third lowest in the Eastern Conference. I know it's not the lowest because I did that New England video talk about New England scoring the fewest goal out of any team, not only in the East but in MLS in general. The goal allowed that they have is 17 goals. So again, it's not because this winless run that they have is not because of bad defense. They play relatively good in terms of the defensive end. Heck, they actually conceded 4 less goals than Inter Miami in terms of being in first place. And there's a bunch of teams that is above them. Even teams in the playoffs have conceded more goals than Atlanta United has had. And the goal differential is not bad too. I mean, it's exactly dead even at 0, and there's team above them. Even playoff team has negative goal differential. But the bottom line is that the way that this team, even though there's that belief that things will turn around because of all these close games that they play and they're not able to get it done, and the front office and even Gard Lagerwey believe that eventually they will win some of these close games to end this streak. Again, I just think that the longer this winless run goes, and I think especially in this midweek game against Inter Miami, if they get absolutely blown out in this one, I think Garth Logway has no choice. He has to fire Gonzalo Pineda. I mean, every Atlanta fans are basically calling for Pineda heads, and that they maybe would eventually get their wish too. Because one thing we know about an MLS season, once the first head coach is let go, that's when the coaching carousel and the turnover rate is going to become very high. And even though I know some people might say there's not really good option right now in terms of the head coaching role, I argue that we seen that last season as well, where maybe some will say that there's not really a lot of good coaching option. But once the first head coach has been fired, the second one and the third one and the fourth one come really quickly. In fact, last year we saw the first two head coaches being let go in the same week, and after Gary Smith was relieved of his duties, I would not be surprised that we would see the second head coach that is being fired. I mean, I think right now it's pretty clear that between Pineda and Caleb Porter, those are probably the two that could be the one to go next. And that again, this has been a long time coming. It's unfortunate too because back when Gonzalo Pineda took charge of this team, I thought that was probably the best option considering what Pineda has done with Seattle and all the good job that he's done. But this is also another example of what happened when an assistant head coach and a good assistant head coach that is in decide again to the head coach role, and it doesn't always transition well. In fact, most of the coaching tree under Brian Schmetzer has not done very well. I mean, remember when Ezra Henriksen got a job with Chicago, and yeah, he didn't even last a year in that job, and this feels like it's going to be the same case for Gonzalo Pineda as well, and even with Carlos Bocanegra as well. Again, it feels like Carlos Bocanegra is getting the longest leash, and probably getting a leash that I would never imagine, especially with so much expectation and a very impatient fan base like Atlanta United that is. But this has to be it. I would not be surprised that once Pineda does get announced that he's being fired, Bocanegra will follow that suit as well. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at Atlanta United ongoing 9-game winless run. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video. And if you're Atlanta fans, I mean, I know it's probably miserable seeing all these winless run that and the 9-game winless run that they're on. But let me know in the comments below which of these next 5 games, or which game do you think that this winless run is going to go? And also, when exactly Gonzalo Pineda is going to get fired from this team? Because I think right now it's not if Gonzalo Pineda is going to get fired, it's probably now when, because of the way how bad things are going with this Atlanta United side. But yeah, there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.